Rachel Carter, an experienced and dedicated nurse, had spent 7 years caring for her patients with compassion and skill, but her world turned upside down when the hospital she worked for underwent restructuring, leaving her without a job. In her small apartment, Rachel sat at the kitchen table, anxiously calculating her dwindling savings. Bills piled up, and the thought of providing for her 6-year-old son Lucas weighed heavily on her shoulders. Lucas, with his bright eyes and boundless curiosity, sensed her worry. "Mom," he asked quietly, "are we going to lose our home?" Rachel forced a smile, hiding her fear. "No, sweetheart. I'll find a new job. Even better than before. You'll see." One late night, while scrolling through job listings, Rachel stumbled upon a peculiar ad. Full-time caregiver needed, on-site residence required, above market salary. The next morning, Rachel found herself in a taxi, heading toward Aster Estate, the address listed in the job ad. As the car approached the towering iron gates, her breath caught. The estate was massive, its sprawling grounds manicured to perfection, but the grandeur felt distant and cold. She adjusted her worn blazer, a clearance sale find from years ago, and pressed the intercom button. "Good morning," a formal voice greeted. "Good morning, this is Rachel Carter. I have an interview scheduled for 9." The gates opened with a smooth hum, revealing a long driveway lined with ancient oaks. The mansion loomed ahead, its stone facade stately, yet imposing. Rachel was met at the door by Martha, the estate's housekeeper, who escorted her through the richly adorned halls. "I must prepare you," Martha said, as they stopped outside an oak-paneled office. "Mr. Nathaniel Blake, the master of the house, can be demanding. He values competence and discretion above all else. And whatever you do, do not show him pity." Rachel nodded, her heart pounding. She stepped into the office, her gaze meeting Nathaniel Blake for the first time. Seated in a motorized wheelchair, he exuded a commanding presence despite his condition. His sharp green eyes assessed her with an intensity that made her feel like she was being measured against an invisible standard. "You're the candidate," he said, his voice clipped. "What makes you think you're qualified for this role?" Rachel steadied her nerves. "I've spent 7 years as a nurse, including experience in rehabilitation care. I believe I can handle the demands of this position." Nathaniel glanced at her application. "You have a son. Lucas, age 6. That could be a problem." "With respect, Mr. Blake, being a mother has taught me dedication and patience," Rachel replied boldly. After a tense silence, he spoke. "You'll live here. Your son can stay in the annex behind the main house. My driver will take him to school. However, I require absolute commitment to this role. And remember, no pity." Rachel nodded, sensing that this job would change her life in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Rachel arrived at the annex, a charming but modest 2-bedroom cottage nestled behind the grand estate. The space, though small compared to the main house, was cozy and well-kept, with a private garden that Lucas immediately fell in love with. "Mom, it's like a fairy tale house," Lucas exclaimed, running to explore. Rachel smiled, relieved to see her son's excitement. Their first morning at Aster Estate began early. At 6:30 a.m., Martha appeared to brief Rachel on Nathaniel's strict routine. "Mr. Blake expects breakfast at 7 sharp. He has physiotherapy at 9 and meetings throughout the day. He's meticulous about timing." Rachel arrived at Nathaniel's room precisely at 7. He was already awake, gazing out the window. "You're late," he remarked, though the clock had just struck the hour. The day unfolded with a series of exacting tasks. From assisting Nathaniel with his morning routines to organizing his extensive schedule, Rachel quickly realized the level of precision he demanded. Every task had to be done perfectly, down to the temperature of the towel or the placement of items on his desk. "The towel is too cold," Nathaniel commented curtly during his bath. "I'll make sure it's warmer next time," Rachel replied calmly. Her patience was tested further when Nathaniel barely acknowledged her efforts. Yet, Rachel noticed glimpses of vulnerability in his sharp remarks and rigid demeanor. Beneath his tough exterior, there was pain. A man struggling to adapt to a life he hadn't chosen. Lucas, however, had a different effect on Nathaniel. That afternoon, the boy wandered into the garden near the main house, his soccer ball in hand. Nathaniel, watching from his balcony, noticed the child kicking the ball against the annex wall. "Do you play soccer?" Nathaniel called out unexpectedly. Lucas froze, surprised by the question. "Yes, sir. I like being the goalkeeper." Nathaniel nodded thoughtfully. "There's an old soccer field at the back of the estate. It hasn't been used in years, but it could be restored. For you." Lucas's eyes lit up. "Really? That would be amazing." Rachel watched, her heart warming as she saw a glimmer of kindness in Nathaniel's guarded demeanor. For the first time, she saw Nathaniel not as the harsh employer, but as a man capable of kindness. That evening, as Rachel tucked Lucas into bed, he asked, "Mom, is Mr. Nathaniel a knight? He has a castle and everything." Rachel chuckled softly, stroking his hair. "Not quite, sweetheart. But maybe he's someone who just needs a little help finding his way." Over the following weeks, Rachel's dedication began to create subtle yet profound changes at Aster Estate. Nathaniel remained demanding, but Rachel learned to anticipate his needs, executing her duties with calm efficiency. Meanwhile, Lucas's lively presence brought a rare sense of joy to the estate. One morning, as Rachel prepared breakfast for Nathaniel, Lucas burst into the kitchen, his soccer ball clutched tightly in his hands. "Mom, can I play on the soccer field Mr. Nathaniel talked about?" Lucas asked excitedly. Before Rachel could respond, Nathaniel appeared in the doorway, his wheelchair humming softly. "Anderson, the driver, will have the field cleared by this afternoon," Nathaniel announced, addressing Lucas directly. "Thank you, Mr. Nathaniel," Lucas exclaimed, his joy infectious. That afternoon, Lucas ran across the freshly mowed field, kicking his ball with uncontainable energy. From his office window, Nathaniel watched the scene unfold. His stern expression softened as Lucas's laughter echoed across the grounds. "Would you like to join him?" Rachel asked gently, standing behind Nathaniel. "Don't be absurd," he replied brusquely. "I've got work to do." But she caught the flicker of longing in his eyes before he turned away. The field became a place of transformation for more than just Lucas. One weekend, Nathaniel surprised Rachel by asking to referee a friendly match between Lucas and his school friends. Wearing a casual sweater instead of his usual suit, Nathaniel positioned his chair at the sideline and watched intently. "Penalty!" he declared after a questionable tackle, his authoritative tone eliciting both laughter and protests from the children. For the first time, Rachel heard Nathaniel laugh, brief but genuine. As the game ended and the children ran to the annex for snacks, Rachel noticed Nathaniel lingering on the field, his gaze distant. "You did well out there," she said as she approached. "I haven't been on a soccer field in years," he admitted. "Before the accident, I used to play in charity matches with my team." Rachel sensed the weight of his words and responded carefully. "Maybe it's time to bring some of that back. The field isn't just for Lucas. It could be for you too." Nathaniel didn't reply, but his silence held a sense of consideration. The estate's dynamics shifted further with the arrival of Charlotte Blake, Nathaniel's older sister, who came to recover from a minor surgery. Charlotte was lively and perceptive, her sharp eyes quickly noticing the changes in her brother. "Rachel," Charlotte said one morning as Rachel assisted her with physical therapy, "I don't know what you've done, but my brother is different, lighter somehow. He smiles more, even if he tries to hide it." Rachel laughed nervously. "I think Lucas deserves most of the credit. He has a way of bringing out the best in people." "Lucas is wonderful," Charlotte agreed, "but you're the one who's brought life back to this house, and to Nathaniel." Before Rachel could respond, Nathaniel entered the room. His eyes briefly met Rachel's, a flicker of unspoken understanding passing between them. "Am I interrupting something?" he asked, his tone casual but tinged with curiosity. "Just a bit of girl talk," Charlotte replied with a teasing smile. As time passed, Rachel and Nathaniel found themselves drawn closer together. Their conversations grew more personal, touching on their fears and dreams. One evening, as Rachel helped Nathaniel with his physiotherapy, he asked unexpectedly, "Why did you become a nurse?" "To help people," Rachel answered simply, "and to provide a stable life for Lucas after his father left." Nathaniel nodded, respecting the boundary in her voice. After a moment, he said, "Before the accident, I thought I had everything. Success, wealth, independence. But now," his voice trailed off. "You still have so much to offer," Rachel said softly, "and Lucas thinks you're a hero. You've given him something he didn't have before, a sense of belonging." Nathaniel's gaze lingered on her. One evening, as the estate basked in the soft glow of twilight, Rachel brought Nathaniel his evening tea. He was seated in his study, staring out the window, the remnants of a conversation with Charlotte lingering in his mind. "Rachel," he began, his voice unusually hesitant, "there's something I need to tell you." Rachel placed the tray down, her heart quickening. "What is it, Mr. Blake?" Nathaniel turned his chair slowly to face her, his expression conflicted but determined. "It's about how I feel, about you." The words hung in the air, laden with emotions he had kept buried for too long. "These past months," he continued, "you've done more than just care for me. You've brought life back to this place, and to me. I don't think I can ignore how I feel any longer." Rachel felt her breath catch. "Nathaniel, Let me finish," he interrupted gently. "I know our situation is complicated. You're my employee, and you have Lucas to think about. But I need you to know, I care for you, Rachel. Deeply." Rachel's voice was barely above a whisper. "I feel the same. But this is more than just us. What about Lucas? What about the estate?" At that moment, a small voice interrupted them. "Mom?" Rachel turned to see Lucas standing in the doorway, his wide eyes filled with curiosity. "Why are you and Mr. Nathaniel talking like that?" Rachel crouched down to Lucas's level, trying to explain. "Sweetheart, Mr. Nathaniel is very important to us. He's been a good friend and—" "Is he going to be my dad?" Lucas asked bluntly. Nathaniel froze, his expression softening. After a pause, he said, "Only if you'd like that, Lucas." Lucas grinned. "I think that would be cool." For Rachel, the decision became clear. She met Nathaniel's gaze, her heart full of hope. "Then we'll face this together." The next morning, the atmosphere at Aster Estate felt different. Lighter, as though the house itself welcomed the changes to come. Rachel and Nathaniel decided it was time to share their decision with everyone who had become part of their lives. Gathered in the main living room were Lucas, Charlotte, Martha, and Anderson. Nathaniel, with Rachel standing beside him, addressed the group. "From today," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "things will change. Rachel is no longer just an employee. She's someone who means a great deal to me. To us." He glanced at Lucas, who beamed with excitement. Charlotte was the first to react, clapping her hands together. "It's about time. I was wondering how long it would take for the two of you to figure this out." Martha wiped away a tear. "Oh, this house has needed love for so long. I'm so happy for you both." Anderson gave a subtle nod, his quiet approval reassuring. Lucas tugged at Nathaniel's sleeve. "So, can I call you Dad now?" Nathaniel's green eyes softened as he knelt slightly in his wheelchair to meet Lucas's gaze. "I'd be honored if you did, Lucas." The boy threw his arms around Nathaniel, solidifying the bond they had been building over the past months. With the announcement made, life at Aster Estate began to shift in meaningful ways. Nathaniel took on a renewed sense of purpose, channeling his energy into accessibility projects. The once abandoned soccer field became a hub of activity, complete with an adapted section where Nathaniel could join in the fun with Lucas and his friends. Rachel, with Nathaniel's unwavering support, returned to school to specialize in physical therapy. She juggled her studies with her responsibilities at the estate, all while raising Lucas in an environment filled with love and encouragement. One afternoon, Nathaniel surprised Rachel by proposing the creation of a foundation. "We've been given a second chance, Rachel. Let's use it to help others, especially those who faced challenges like mine." Together, they launched the Blake Carter Foundation, dedicated to supporting individuals with disabilities and promoting inclusive design. The foundation quickly became a beacon of hope, transforming countless lives. On a sunny Saturday almost a year later, the family gathered in the garden for a picnic. Lucas and his friends played soccer on the revitalized field, while Charlotte played a lively tune on the piano from the veranda. Nathaniel and Rachel sat side by side, their hands intertwined. "You know," Nathaniel said, his eyes fixed on the vibrant scene before them, "there was a time when I thought my life ended the day of the accident." Rachel squeezed his hand gently. "But it wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a new chapter. Our chapter." As the golden sunlight bathed the estate, their laughter mingled with Lucas's joyful shouts, filling the air with the unmistakable sound of a family truly at peace. The journey that had begun with loss and struggle had transformed Aster Estate into a home brimming with love, hope, and purpose. The estate, once a symbol of isolation, now thrived with life and activity. Nathaniel found new meaning in his work, blending his business acumen with his personal experiences to drive initiatives for the Blake Carter Foundation. He regularly spoke at conferences, advocating for inclusivity and sharing his journey of resilience and rediscovery. Rachel often stood by his side, her strength and compassion a testament to the partnership they had built. Lucas thrived in his new environment, excelling at school and becoming the heart of the estate with his boundless energy and curiosity. He often boasted to his friends about the coolest soccer field ever and the dad who was the best referee in the world. One evening, as the family gathered on the terrace, Charlotte raised a toast. "To new beginnings," she said, her voice filled with pride. "To a house that's finally a home, to a family that's found its heart, and to the future you're all building together." Rachel, her hand resting on Nathaniel's, smiled warmly. "None of this would have been possible without everyone here. This isn't just our story. It's all of ours." Nathaniel looked at Lucas, who was animatedly telling a story about his latest soccer game. "You know," he said, his voice thoughtful, "I once thought I'd lost everything that mattered. But now, I see that life didn't take from me. It gave me something far greater." Rachel leaned in, her voice trembling with emotion. "It didn't just give us a second chance. It gave us a family." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over Aster Estate, the family sat together, dreaming of a future full of endless possibilities. In that moment, they knew love, resilience, and hope had turned their trials into triumphs.